Welcome to the Time to Fly podcast. It's time to give your business wings and take flight to achieve more impact, influence, and income with unique perspectives, tools, and tips from successful entrepreneurs and business professionals to help your business fly. Here to educate, encourage, and entertain you with their own unique perspectives and experience, plus sharing anecdotes of growing up as cowgirls. Here's your host, Nicole Homont.
Welcome to this episode of Time to Fly, Give Your Business Wings. I'm your host, Jill Fleming, and today I am here with a dear friend, Priscilla Stephan. Priscilla is an intuitive business strategist who helps leaders step into their next level of leadership and create more impact and profit with joy and ease. Priscilla's holistic approach to success allows her clients to live their dream lifestyle while confidently sharing their brilliance and embodying their purpose. She is the creator of the Leading from Your Soul Archetypes assessment that supports mission-driven entrepreneurs to create businesses and a global impact by embodying their natural strengths and leadership style. Thank you so much for joining me today, Priscilla.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
So Priscilla and I have been friends for about 4 years. Priscilla is originally from Brazil, and she relocated here from New York to San Diego. And it was just destined for us to meet, I think, as there were several aspects of the universe that were there to bring us together. And we have been partners in crime over the last several years. And when I say that Priscilla is my secret weapon, I literally mean it. So when I'm looking at making big decisions or I'm unsure of what step to take next, Priscilla is usually my first call.
Thank you.
Priscilla, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is your experience with burnout. I know I've been with you on this journey of going through that process and seeing you approach burnout, go through it, and now come out on the other side. What would you like to share about that?
Burnout is a bitch. Don't go there. It's awful. I would say that in 8 years of doing business, I've been a coach for 8 years. First as a health coach, helping women with emotional eating for 3 years. And then once I uncovered this magical tool, which we can talk about in a moment, called the Akashic Records, which helps me channel your soul's clarity and plan for your best life, I rebranded into intuitive business and help conscious women entrepreneurs, spiritual women really step into the business that they want to have and the life that they want to have with soul, with joy and deep sense of meaning without killing themselves, throwing their bodies under the bus or their sanity in the process. And so I burned out to some degree in the first iteration of just, hustling. It was still very much the hustle mode. And then it really got bad about 2.5, 3 years ago. And it was a steady decline of energy. And there were very clear both symptoms in the well-being of my body as well as the well-being of my business. And what it really was energetically, physically, I was getting very tired. I would wake up in the morning and I could not get out of bed even though I'd slept a whole night, or I'd get really wired at night. I was getting moody and anxious. I started to have anxiety and panic attacks that I had never had before. Hypothyroidism, autoimmune, which is what it is. I kind of became a bit of a hypochondriac. I thought I was going to die. I had a brain tumor. It was kind of crazy. And on the business side, what was partly causing that was that what was been working in my business stopped working. And so instead of actually allowing myself the permission to be courageous enough to consider what the alternative would be, where I was being guided to next, as Abraham says, the path of least resistance, I kept hitting on the same musical note of, no, let me try this. Let me try what I've tried again because it was familiar, because it was comfortable. But that created stress of how's the money going to come in? How am I going to do this? And so the anxiety and the stress of making things work, of feeling this enormous weight on my shoulders, of having to quote unquote, figure it all out, just took a huge toll. And also, honestly, I had gone through so many changes, life changes. I'd moved to San Diego. I had met my now husband. I had traveled quite a bit. I'd gone through a lot of transitions that required me to hold on to a lot of and process a lot of stress and anxiety and stuff that was unknown. And I think that it all came to a head at some point, and my system just said, okay, that's enough. I'm going to stop because I can't take it anymore. And I'm going to pause you so you can reevaluate. And that's what happened. And it was very painful. I mean, there were definitely some even very dark nights of the soul. And I had no idea for a very long time what was happening. So that was what made it worse. I'd heard about people burning out, but I'm like, that just happens to other people, or you just kind of push through and burn out, which you don't do. So
suck it up, right?
Just suck it up, push through, just keep going. That's just the way it is. You just don't have a chance to stop. What do you mean?
You're an entrepreneur. You don't have vacation days, right?
Yeah. And so it was really, what is going on? And the terror of like pushing through just isn't the answer anymore. Well, then what do I do? It became like I had to create a different way of operating. And that was absolutely terrifying. But on the flip side, it was the double-edged sword, because doing what I was doing was absolutely not an option anymore. And it was becoming more and more evident.
I was with you along on that journey. And I remember definitely some phone calls where you're like, I just don't understand. This just isn't working anymore. Then also dealing with having to stop and really take care of your body is, I think those of us that are very sensitive, we process a lot of energy through our bodies. And then when we hold on to that stress and we don't take time for that self-care and we don't do those things, our body gets to that point where it's like, no more. I experienced you having to deal with all that. And it was interesting from my perspective, because my exuberant, happy, giggly friend went from being that person to no energy and having, even just a hard time getting up off the couch, and just all of that you went through. I know that you're on the other side of that now, and it's been a journey. What would you say to women that are approaching burnout or are starting to feel those symptoms? What would you say to them?
Well, my heart goes out to them first and foremost. And I would say it's not your fault. There's nothing broken. There's nothing to fix, and to have compassion for yourself and a lot of self-love. Because honestly, I think part of the journey of coming out of burnout is self-love and self-compassion and self-forgiveness for, not knowing better, right? When we know better, we do better, first of all. The second one is to pay attention, because burnout does not stop. It's like a unrestrained train that has no brakes if you let it keep going the way it is, and it will not change unless you change. So pay attention. And even though it can be really hard when there's so many moving parts, or you need the money, it is a warning sign, and it only gets louder until you actually do something about it. And then to get help, whatever that help is, a therapist, a mentor, a coach. In my case, the gateway to change, because my body was breaking down, was I wanted to find somebody that could help me with my hormones. And I believe in functional medicine, where you look at the body, the whole body system versus just a body part. And I found a functional endocrinologist nearby, and we did a whole bunch of tests on my adrenals, my hormones, my thyroid, a whole bunch of things. And then I got put on a whole bunch of supplements and a diet. And then I slowly began to exercise and do things that were very relaxing in nature. And that began to turn me around. I also did go through a whole battery of tests, because I was convinced there was something terribly wrong with me. MRI scans, CAT scans, to make sure I didn't have any major life-threatening thing, because that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the fear of having something created more panic that create more panic, And so getting those tests and making sure that I was on that path, and then having support from my friends and family, giving myself permission, though, ultimately. I think when it comes to burnout, a permission slip is the answer from ourselves to do things differently, to take a break. And that does mean a lot more trust and self-trust, when you don't have the plan, when you don't know all the answers. And then eventually, this year going to therapy, I took a break for almost a year from my business in terms of growing it or pushing in any way, because I just did not have the physical, emotional capacity as a coach to hold space for other people when I barely had space for myself. But get help. Do that one thing that will help. And it's not just about going to yoga, although I did go to yoga and started that. It's like, what is that one thing that will really start to pivot your awareness and how you feel in your body? And that will create more space in your life, in your calendar, in your energy, so that you start to create an opening for change.
In our current society, it's always push, more. And I feel it all the time too. It's like, oh, am I doing enough? Am I working hard enough and going hard enough and doing this. And I get into that spin cycle of around and round and round. And then I get to like the end of the week and then I'm just exhausted. I know for me, seeing what you went through, and I've been more kind to myself to be like, you know what? I need a break. I'm going to step away. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to take an afternoon off. And I often find when I do give myself that permission, just getting away from it, I have an awareness of like, oh, I should call this person, or, oh, I should go do this. Taking away that pressure of the day to day, we got to get it done, in that spin cycle does create that space that you can create from a place of ease as opposed of a place of pressure.
Absolutely. And it does, look, for me, I went kicking and screaming, just was so committed to success that, I had made a decision that I was willing to throw myself under the bus for success. And that was where the self-forgiveness has to come in for myself even still now, because I was like, wow, but the price was enormous. Because my understanding, at least for myself, of burnout is that once you get to the degree that I got, yes, you can make changes, quickly and really start to see changes soon, but it takes a while. You can't just dash through recovery of burnout, because it leaves consequences, psychological, emotional. It can bring stuff up, physical as well. I'm not saying getting out of burnout or beginning to feel better can't happen relatively quickly. It can. But often, depending on the degree in which you find yourself, it will take some time. And so the body keeps score. So to avoid having to go through this later, address it sooner.
When you see the signs, address it earlier rather than later, because the longer I think you put it off, the longer that takes to get back.
Absolutely. And it's so easy in the mind, right, to say, oh, just to push, I'll just do one more week, just until one more launch, or just until I get the book finished, or until my family is whatever, or until, whatever the thing is that's imminent in your mind. But I think that's one of the core lessons of burnout, is that we are that golden goose, right? If we malfunction, the golden eggs don't happen, right? We are the source, the biggest asset, and that has to be a priority. And that's the shift that burnout, I think, offers us.
We're going to take a quick break for our sponsors, and we will be right back.
This episode is sponsored by the book Freedom to Fly, the Visionary Leader's Guide to Unlocking Your Unique Freedom Code to confidently create more impact, influence, and income. Get your copy of this best-selling book on Amazon.com.
I am here with my dear friend, Priscilla Stephan from PriscillaStephan.com. She is a lead from your soul coach. And Priscilla, we've been talking about burnout and your experience going through that, and now how you've also transitioned into helping other women in business, successful women, that they're doing great, but they're dealing with that burnout of trying to do too much. So what have you learned from your experience, and now what are you doing now with your business?
Yes. So I am a channel, and I use a tool called the Akashic Records that really helps me tap into your soul, the soul of your business, and provide clarity on your purpose and your direction. And 3 years ago, I was given this body of work on soul leadership archetypes that helps you understand your innate natural style of leading, your innate gifts, your strengths, your motivations to lead. And there are 5 archetypal families, right? The mystics, the visionaries, the strategists, the divine feminine, and the explorers. And most of the people I work with are mystics and visionaries. Mystics are here to facilitate consciousness and to create paradigm shifts in the world through their healing, intuitive, and creative talent. And also visionaries, who are the disruptors, right? The rule breakers, the ones that believe that there is a different way to do things, and they blaze through and make it happen, right? It's been fascinating to help these paradigm shifters and change makers really step into their own power and freedom by understanding how they naturally operate in the world. There's human design, Enneagram, DISC, all these ways. And this is a soul approach of understanding, yes, this is me. I don't need to be anyone else. I don't need to try harder. I don't need to keep comparing myself or trying to copy or model someone else. I can be me. And that creates so much more energy and space for us to then actually act and be visible and create change versus fighting internally with ourselves, trying to be someone we're not. So for me, I'm obviously a dominant mystic. I'm a priestess in terms of the archetypes. And what that means is that really giving myself permission to lead with my intuition, to be creative in how I do things, and to follow those nudges implicitly will create more ease. It creates the path of least resistance. And it gives us that permission to contribute. Leadership in the body of work is described as contribution. It's that simple. As a mother, as a janitor, as someone working at McDonald's, as a parent, we contribute, we're leading, we're gifting, we're sharing our gifts to the world innately, naturally, right? It just comes out of us. And sometimes we forget that we get to be paid really well for those things that come so naturally for us, and we make things complicated. So the Soul Leadership Archetypes framework really helps you understand your perfect just the way you are, and giving yourself permission to be the way you are designed allows you to contribute with more ease and to make a greater impact if that's what you want to make.
Yes, I know when you did the leadership archetype reading for me, I was actually very surprised that I was a mystic. I've always been in resistance to that and always like, oh, well, I know I'm a strategist. And so when it came up that I was a mystic, it allowed me to shift and to be more aware of my intuition and following the path of least resistance for me that may not look like anyone else's. And oftentimes, I know for me too, people don't understand why I choose the things I choose because they're so far outside of their realm of reference. But it's the path of least resistance. It's the lightest choice for me. And so I know when I went through that process with you, it really helped me to shift and to be able to then start choosing from that soul level that has just really taken my life in some really fun and exciting places.
It does. And it goes so much deeper than, oh, I'm this archetype or I'm a this or I'm a that. It's really about deepening into accessing energies and gifts and strengths that are already innately within us, that if we listen to and amplify them and give them space to lead us, will allow us to have so much more ease. And that's, I think, one of the things when we get into burnout, or I love working with women entrepreneurs that are maxed out, meaning at capacity, or they're really in a fun stage of growth. And they long for ease because they equate oftentimes growth with even more tasks on their plate, and they can't even imagine doing anything else because they're already so beyond capacity. But there is ease when you learn to be more of yourself and to invite ease into your life and take things off your plate and give yourself permission to restructure your business and change your perspective into really looking at yourself as the CEO. And what I call the CEO is the steward of a vision greater than yourself, right? And so you become the steward of that vision versus, oh my gosh, I guess I've got to do all these menial tasks or just pile more on my plate, or because God forbid, your VA got sick or your email glitch happened and you don't know how to fix it. And you spend all this time looking at minutia when you're really the architect of that bigger vision versus the bricklayer, as I like to call it. And so there's room for change. And it really starts with that permission and that perspective shift within ourselves of what's possible, of what can be easier. So we work smarter and we don't work harder. It is possible, and it is what is required of the vision to really move us forward in a way that allows us to be supported. It's the word generative, right? It's life-giving, for life-giving energy, where what would it take for our business to be life-giving and energizing to us, our bodies, our clients, and the greater good? And that's what soul leadership is about. It's about a win-win-win where everyone wins, where you're congruent and in alignment with your natural style of leading and contributing in the world, and making sure that as you show up congruently, you get to create a business model, the vehicle for your contribution, in a way that's congruent with your body, your well-being, your sanity, and your core values that matter to you.
And so if somebody wants to know what their leadership archetype is, how would they find that out?
Go to PriscillaStephan.com. It's an 8-minute meditation that I guide you through, and then you self-assess. There will be a quiz next year. And then you get to understand yourself a little bit better, and you can get to play with these energies and see, well, how can I, for example, if you're a mystic, really allow myself to bring my working with energy and hearing guidance into my life? If you're a visionary, how can you give yourself permission to not fit in and know that your superpower is precisely that you go against the grain, because we need you to go against the grain to create different frameworks and paradigms in the world.
So I highly recommend you go and find out what your archetype is. So Priscilla, what's next for you?
Oh, I'm so excited. I lead my business and my life through soul impulses or nudges and intuition. And it's called the Edge Experience. It is a one-day curated event for women CEOs here in San Diego. And it's for conscious women entrepreneurs who find themselves maxed out on the verge of burnout and or in a growth phase. And they know two things: that how they show up in their business needs to shift so that they can grow and stop butting up against themselves. And also that they likely need to make some shifts and restructuring in their business model so that it's more leverage, and so that they're out of doing stuff that they don't want to be doing, and they're really being the CEO and the visionary and the steward of that vision. And so it's really helping them create that pivot in their perspective shift that will create an opening for everything that's to come. There's a little bit of time beforehand with me. There's also a month of support afterwards. And it's really an opportunity to work on the business to create that opening for you to have so much more ease in how you show up in your business, with your presence, with your thinking, and also in how you structure your business model. Maybe it's adding team members. Maybe it's working fewer hours. Maybe it's delegating a lot more and hiring. Usually that's the first step, is people freak out around hiring and trusting people to hire. And it's just a phenomenal experience. And it's going to be just magical. It's really for the woman that values the spiritual, the intuitive, and the practical strategy around doing business. And that comes from the inside out.
That sounds like a great experience. And it's going to be in La Jolla, which is a beautiful location. I've seen the venue and it is absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, it's a beautiful house and just very cozy and gorgeous views outside, and just a welcoming space to create magic and change.
So Priscilla, something that we like to ask and to give kind of that nugget of wisdom is, if you could go back and give yourself a nugget of wisdom when you're just starting out in your business, what would you tell the younger version of you?
It's okay to be ambitious, but tread gently with your body. Listen to your body's guidance and wisdom. Don't throw it under the bus. You know, the bill will come because the body does not bypass what happens to it. So make sure that you partner up with your body instead of throwing it under the bus. And I think that now, from 2010 or 11, when I began my business, there has begun a shift in consciousness, where there was a glorification of busyness and hustle, now to ease and flow and adding more feminine energies into leadership and business. So I'm very grateful to see that. So I think we've woken up after so many scares or burnout situations like mine, where we know that we have to, and another option is available to do business, because we can thrive and we can do it, and we get to trust ourselves in how we do business and how we show up and how we lead. And we're perfect just the way we are.
And how can people find you, Priscilla?
Go to PriscillaStephan.com. I also am on Facebook, Priscilla Stephan. Reach out to me. Let me know how things are going. And I'd love to hear what your archetypes are and what they bring up for you. And if you would like soul and practical guidance on guiding your business into the next level without burnout, I might be the person to help you. And I'd love to do that. I do one-on-one support, coaching, and mentorship, and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much for being with us, Priscilla. And to our listeners, please tune in next week for a new episode. And remember, it is time to fly. Give your business wings.
A big thank you to this episode's sponsor, Freedom to Fly, the visionary leader's guide to unlocking your unique freedom code to confidently create more impact, influence, and income. Get your copy of this best-selling book on Amazon.com.
Join our flock. Stay informed of all things Time to Fly by subscribing to our newsletter at timetoflypodcast.com. And be sure to tune in to our next show.